Hello, and welcome to this tutorial about the N3C enclave and specifically the Data Use Request Process, or DUR. Before we begin, I want to note that while the DUR process is required to gain access to one of the three levels of secure N3C patient data, it can only be completed from within the N3C enclave, meaning you must already be registered for N3C and have an account covered by a Data Use Agreement, or DUA. If you haven't yet logged into the Enclave, you should review our other training materials pertaining to account creation and login, and then come back. This video also assumes you are familiar with the three levels of data provided by N3C. You can find a summary of them and their general access requirements at covid.cd2h.org/N3C governance. Now, before we dive into the policies and procedures involved with completing a data use request, it is very helpful to understand how projects and data are organized within the enclave, since the end result of completing the DUR will be to gain access to a project with permissions to certain datasets. Within the enclave, resources such as datasets, analysis files, reports, folders, and so on primarily live in what are known as project workspaces. These can be found under the Projects and Files link in the left navigation bar in the Projects tab, which is open by default. This filing drawer icon is used to represent a project workspace, but you can think of it like a folder with special permissions. If we scroll down, we can see that most project workspaces are for research projects. That's what the RP prefix means. By the way, while we're looking at this particular list of projects, you can see these request access buttons here. Note that these don't work to actually get access to a project space. You have to go through the data use request process, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Not all project workspaces are used for research projects, however. Some are used to store raw data tables, and others are used for training or other purposes. To highlight this, I've starred two project workspaces so that they show up in my favorites over here in the left navigation area. The first is the Cynthia project workspace, and the other is the N3C training area project workspace. Neither of these require a DUR approval to access. The Cynthia project workspace stores data tables for a notional data set known as the Cynthia COVID-19 data. The README file here indicates the dataset in more detail, but in brief, this is a publicly available fake dataset designed to contain mock COVID-19 patient data. It was published in a journal article, and we've made some additional customizations to make it more relevant for N3C, and you can read more about those customizations and the publication in the README. Most of the important datasets themselves live deep inside of a subfolder of this particular project workspace. We don't need to know exactly where, and we'll discover why in just a minute. Now let's look into the N3C Training Area project. This is a project workspace where we store various training-related materials, including a practice area folder, where you and anyone else can work on practice analyses, for example, on datasets that are stored in the Cynthia project workspace we just saw. But the ability to work on data that lives in the Cynthia project workspace from an analysis file in the N3C Training Area project workspace is no accident. In order to access data or other resources across workspaces, there must be a reference created from the one to the other. If we expand the references list over on the right side, we can see what references are present in this current project workspace. Specifically, if we scroll down, we can see references to datasets from the Cynthia workspace. There are no references here to datasets in the real level 1, 2, or 3 data, so it isn't possible to do anything with those data from within the training area workspace. Further, regular users like you and me cannot add references to those datasets. Of course, I can browse the Cynthia tables directly in the Cynthia project if I want to, provided I have been given read access to them in that particular project. It's worth noting that normally you won't need to worry about these references. Either an analysis that you're attempting to accomplish will work or won't, depending on whether the reference to the necessary data is present or not, and you won't have the ability to add references yourself. If you do see an error indicating that an analysis you're attempting is missing a reference and you think that this is incorrect, you can feel free to file an issue inside of the Enclave under Help and Support, report an issue, and select Data Request in order to get access to a particular dataset that you think you should already have access to by virtue of having completed the data use request process. I said earlier that we don't need to know exactly where these Cynthia data tables live inside of the Cynthia project workspace, which is a good thing because they live deep inside a nested subfolder. Instead, since I do have read access to them, I can find them in the data catalog, which collects shortcuts commonly used items in easy-to-find collections. The Cynthia Notional Data Collection, for example, contains a set of shortcuts to those Cynthia tables directly. If you see an icon with a purple check mark next to it like this, it means that that particular dataset can be found in some data collection like this. Other collections in the data catalog contain links to other commonly used resources. The de-identified data collection, for example, contains links to the Level 2 data tables, and I don't happen to see the LDS data collection with links to the Level 3 data tables because I'm not involved in any projects that have access to Level 3 data. With that background information in hand, we can move on to talk about the data use request process. At the end, the data use request process will result in several things, if successful. First, if a project workspace associated with the data use request doesn't already exist, then a new project workspace will be created, and references to the appropriate Level 1, Level 2, or Level 3 data sets will be created for that particular project workspace as requested in the data use request. Whether or not the project already exists, you'll be given access as an editor to that project workspace where you can perform analyses on the data tables that have been linked in via references. And finally, if you don't already have read access to the Level 1, Level 2, or Level 3 data tables, you'll be provided read access to those data tables so that you can browse and view them in their originating project workspaces or in the data catalog. The data use request workflow starts from the Enclave homepage. These three buttons on the Enclave homepage pertain to data use requests. The first, Data Use Request, is primarily for researchers who want to initiate a new project workspace with themselves as the lead investigator for the project, possibly inviting other collaborators to join as well. The Explore Projects button allows you to browse existing project workspaces, and for those that are configured to allow joining, provides a place where you can sign on to the DUR for a project you'd like to join as a collaborator. The My Projects button provides an interface to see the status of your existing requests, as well as a place to see your project invitations, and where project leads can appeal data access committee decisions and approve or reject collaborator requests to join their projects. Let's start by reviewing the process to initiate a new project workspace as the lead investigator. The DUR form asks for a variety of information, starting with the project title and abstract, which will be made publicly available and associated with your name as the lead investigator, both inside and outside of the enclave. The research project rationale will only be seen by the Data Access Committee and should include a high-level overview of the proposed goals and methods of the research, as well as a justification for the levels of data access requested. Most rejections occur for failing to properly justify the level being requested, for example by asking for access to the Level 3 data, which includes non-shifted date information and full zip codes, but not indicating in the rationale why these particular features are necessary for the research compared to the Level 2 data where dates are randomly shifted per patient and zip codes are truncated. If your DUR is rejected, you'll have the opportunity to appeal the decision by providing updates to the abstract and justification. Note, however, that once a DUR is accepted by the Data Access Committee, it is difficult to change any information provided in this form, so think carefully about your choices as you go. For example, in the next question, we're asked if we want to allow others to join the project later. If not, we'll be limited to only those that we invite right now in this next collaborators section. Note that later requests to join the project will have to be approved by you as the lead investigator, after which they will go to the Data Access Committee for final approval of project access. Further, filling out this data use request form for a new project makes you the lead investigator, and the responsibilities of the lead investigator, such as approving later collaborator requests, cannot be delegated. As an additional tip, it isn't possible to save a partially completed DUR as a draft, so be prepared before starting by continuing on and seeing the other information requested. Whether or not you choose to allow later requests to join, you can invite collaborators to your project now by listing them next. Invited collaborators will see the invite in their My Projects dashboard, and if they are not yet registered with N3C, they will receive an email inviting them to become registered and get an Enclave login. In the next question, we indicate which level of data access we want for the project. Different follow-up questions are shown depending on the level requested. Let's consider the Level 1 request first. To access Level 1 data, we have to agree to abide by the data usage agreement terms shown here, and we have to have completed an NIH-provided Information Security and Information Management training course within the last year. A link to that course can be found via the More Information icon, and the course of interest is the 60 to 90 minute option shown first. After completing this course, be sure to download your completion certificate. Although the DUR form doesn't require it to be uploaded, you'll want to have it for your records in case anyone asks. Next, you'll need to agree to the terms of the user code of conduct, and before being able to submit the request, you'll also need to acknowledge that some institutions, possibly including your own, have special rules about the appropriateness of linking patient data with other data such as census data, which is possible within the enclave. Next, let's see what additional information is required for a Level 2 data access request. If we select the Level 2 de-identified data option, there are two additional requirements. First, we have to have completed human subjects research protection training within the last 3 years and have the completion date for that training handy. This training is usually provided by your institution via the CITY program or similar. Check with your institution's research office or similar office to find out how to satisfy this requirement if you are unsure. Some institutions don't provide this training for their employees or students, in which case you can use a publicly available training. See the link displayed here for more details. However, note that if your institution does provide HSRP training and you opt for another option instead, you may be in violation of your institution's requirements and policies. The second additional requirement for Level 2 data access also depends on your own institution's policies. While most institutions do not require researchers to work with an institutional review board for human subjects research if the data in question are de-identified, some do. If yours does, you should indicate so and obtain a letter of determination from your local IRB for the project that you can upload here. If you're not sure, check with your local Human Research Protection Program office. Finally, let's see what's different for a Level 3 data request. In fact, the only additional requirement for Level 3 beyond Level 2 is that an IRB determination letter is required no matter what. While we're on the topic of IRB letters, there are a few things you may want to know. If your project does require an IRB determination letter, then you will need to submit one as the lead investigator initiating the project. Other collaborators you invite from your own institution won't need to as well, since they are covered by your IRB determination letter. However, collaborators from other institutions will need to submit a letter from their own local IRB. For example, if I am the lead in submitting a letter from my local IRB, colleagues from another institution, such as Johns Hopkins, will all need to submit a copy of the Johns Hopkins IRB determination letter. Now that we've looked at the DUR form and fields in detail, let's review the Explore Projects dashboard, where you can see existing projects in the enclave and request to join one if the project allows it. Projects that enable joining are shown by default in the top panel under Projects to Join. Each project here is associated with a DUR submitted by the lead investigator, and we can quickly browse their titles, abstracts, and information about the lead investigator. Given that there are many ongoing projects in N3C, the search bar can be quite helpful to find projects of interest. For example, if we search for pregnancy, we can quickly browse related projects, and we can even see projects that are still under review by the Data Access Committee. To join one of these projects, follow the Request to Join link on the right-hand side. This opens up the DUR for that project with information set by the lead, including the title, abstract, and level of data being requested, already filled in and unchangeable. As a requesting collaborator, we just need to fill out the other fields as required for the level of data access determined by the project. This project, for example, requests Level 3 access, so we need to be a researcher from a US-based institution to join, and we'll need to both have human subjects research protection training and an IRB letter of determination from our local IRB, since I'm not from the same institution as the lead. After submitting, the request is forwarded to the lead for approval, and once approved by the project lead, the request goes to the Data Access Committee for final approval, after which my project and data access are configured in the enclave. Lastly, returning back to the Explore Projects dashboard, we can clear our search and, if we like, expand the section below labeled Projects to Explore. These are projects running in N3C, but their leads did not enable them for later joining by collaborators, so we can only browse their titles and other information. Further below, under Operational Projects, are a list of N3C projects used by N3C for more administrative purposes that may or may not be joinable. Finally, let's go and explore the My Projects dashboard, where you can see the status of your requests, invitations from project leads, and if you are a project lead, you can also use this interface to approve join requests or submit appeals to the Data Access Committee for rejected projects. First, let's look at the Invitations section. This lower panel shows projects that I was invited to by the lead investigator when they initially submitted the DUR. Most columns are self-explanatory, except for Review Status, which shows the Data Access Committee's decision on the project's initial DUR, and the Is Domain Team Project column, which indicates whether the project is affiliated with an N3C domain team. See covid.cd2h.org/domain teams for details about those. Clicking the Submit button opens up the DUR for the project with the title, abstract, and data level already set and unchangeable. And like DURs submitted from the Explore Projects dashboard, we just need to complete the additional required information for the data level associated with the project. Once we submit the request, it will go to the Data Access Committee for project access approval. Back in the My Projects dashboard, the top panel shows all of my project requests that have gone to the Data Access Committee or the lead investigator for their approval and their status. We can see each project's data level, title, and abstract, and for those that have been denied or that I am the lead on, we can also see the rationale provided to the Data Access Committee. When a request first gets sent to the Data Access Committee, both the DAC decision and DUR review status columns will show a status of pending. After review, the DAC decision column will list either denied or accept, and there's a column to the right with any comments from the review. If you've requested to join a project, the DUR review status will show pending lead investigator approval until the lead approves you, and then it goes to the Data Access Committee for their approval. Once a request has been fully approved, the DUR review status will briefly enter a pending workspace access phase while the project settings are updated in the enclave for your access, before finally being listed as complete. Remember that you can find workspaces from the Projects and Files menu in the left navigation menu, and you may want to star project workspaces so that they show up in your projects for easy discovery later. While you are waiting on approval, remember that the lead investigator must approve collaborator access before the request is sent to the Data Access Committee for approval, and that the Data Access Committee decisions can take up to 2 weeks. If after that time you haven't heard anything, you may want to submit a support request. Those should be submitted outside the enclave at covid.cd2h.org/support. 2 of the buttons up near the top of this dashboard are for lead investigators. If you've submitted any DURs as a lead investigator that have been denied, you can use the Appeal button to revise the information in the DUR and try again. As a lead, if you have any projects that allow for joining, you can review requests with the Review Collaborator Requests button, where you'll be able to allow or deny requests on a per project and per individual basis. The last button on the My Projects dashboard doesn't pertain directly to data use requests. Rather, N3C requires that all research results, such as figures and summary tables, be reviewed for patient privacy before they can be exported from the enclave to publish. The Download Requests dashboard is where you can make and manage such requests. You don't have to be a project lead to do this, but do check out the linked documentation to understand what we require of exported results and how to make the request. That's all for now. Thank you for tuning in to learn about projects and data access and the data use request workflow in N3C.